Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls across the 28 known galaxies, I don't even know how long this stream's going to last. I almost gave up, but I didn't. Now I'm here with you. We celebrated. I took Elizabeth, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, and the enchantress of entertainment to a lovely dinner at Alexander's Steakhouse here in Pasadena. It was actually, I'd never been there before. Pro tip, the ladies love it when you plan something ahead of time. So I looked around, made reservations, found a place we hadn't been to, and it was a little spendy, but quite a lovely dinner, if I do say so myself. I came back to see something I did not like to see. Of course, you all have probably heard there was a shooting at a movie theater here in California showing The Forever Purge. There was only 6 people in the theater, so they don't really know what happened. According to Deadline, this article was posted at 3 in the afternoon, so I was streaming when this happened. One teenager was killed and another critically wounded in a shooting inside a Southern California movie theater Monday night. The Corona Police Department reported that officers responded to a call for service at about 11:45 p.m. at the Regal Cinemas Corona Crossing RPX Theater in Riverside County. Upon arrival, officers located a male and female, both suffering from gunshot wounds. The 19-year-old male from Corona was transported to a local hospital with life-threatening injuries. The 18-year-old female, also from Corona, succumbed to her injuries at the scene. I don't even know what to say. After coming out of a pandemic, I mean, who does that? Who goes to a movie like The Forever Purge? I mean, all that's going to do is add fuel to the fire. What's wrong with this country? I don't know. I don't know if there was a message being sent there, but it's depressing. Anyway, I didn't like to hear it. But anyway, especially after coming home, I wasn't aware this was going on because I was streaming all day, and it's just horrifying. But that's not what we want to be talking about here on the Midnighter, so I figured, you know what I'm going to do? Having come off of a birthday party and a fun day, I figured I was going to throw it right out to you folks. Come on and cheer me up after a great birthday. I didn't want to have to deal with this. It's horrible for the business, but I'm going to put it in the chat. Why don't you guys come on? Anybody want to come on? There is the chat link. At this point, hey, I'll what are y'all doing? Tell me what you're doing. Come on the show. Let's talk about it. See what's going on. See what you guys are saying if you're ready to go. Well, that was fast. I can always rely on the Post-Geek singularity. Jeremiah, who I have not seen in a while. Jeremiah is here. And William King is here. Gentlemen, give me a moment, and I'm going to put you both in the show. Jeremiah, I don't know if I can hear your... Oh, no, it's probably not you, Jeremiah. It's William. I can hear your... Yeah, I can hear you guys. But I can hear you. If I put you on, I can hear me talking to you guys. I need to put on some headphones or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying. And Jeremiah, I haven't seen you in a while. It's going to be fun to talk to you. I have lots to ask you about. So let's see. Let me get you in, Jeremiah. I'm getting her done. Getting her done. Let's see. Put you in. I do. I have you now. Yes, I do. You sound good. I don't hear myself. That's always a bonus. So, William, I'm going to put you in two. Hold on a minute. Let me just get you in. I've misspelled your name. It's Kind, and you're King. You're William King, not William Kind. Although I'm sure you're a kind man. You're kind like a king. But that's not how I spelled it. So hold on. Let me put you in as well. Okay, guys. Yeah, this is going to be good because I was getting frustrated trying to get this stream working, and I was ready to put I don't know, put something in my eyeball. That's I stuck it out. Damn it! I can't let everybody down. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kind souls, I've got two guests here. The first, of course, is Jeremiah, who you know, who you love. I know and love him. And then there's William King, who's also been here before. So welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the Midnighter. William, Jeremiah. First of all, how are you both this evening?
Hey, I've been doing good. Glad to be here.
Why don't you, for people who might be new, Jeremiah, I've spelled your name with two I's. I've screwed up. Jeremiah, I know you're from Houston, but tell everybody where you're from.
Yeah, I'm from Houston, Texas. Been on the show a few times, probably a few too many times.
No, it's not. You never too many times.
So I thought I'd give it a little breather. Some things been transpiring since I last was on the show, so I thought I'd hop back in and talk to you if you had some time to share with me.
Absolutely. And William, you've been on the show before too. Where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming to you from beautiful Port Orchard, Washington.
My home state. So
Yes,
I would
indeed.
ask you both by S Beam sends an on-set sticker. Thank you, S Beam. I hope you're sitting in that chair as you make action figures. So let me ask you both. We're coming up to the end of July. How are you both doing right now? How are things? I guess I'll start with you, Jeremiah. How are things? What's been transpiring?
Things have been going good. I've been enjoying myself, watching some pretty interesting stuff on TV. Interesting movies. Looking forward to Suicide Squad next week. That's my most anticipated film of the year. So
I've only heard. I have to say, of all the movies that have come out this year, I have heard more glowing recommendations from people literally across the industry about Suicide Squad than anything else that's come out this year. The early buzz on this movie is
excited.
off the hook.
I'm very excited. I feel like I wanted Birds of Prey to be this last year. I had the same attitude about it, but that kind of disappointed people. I thought it was really good, but I think Suicide Squad is going to be that perfect mix of director and topic. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'm hoping so too. The more I see of it, the more it looks like it is a hoot. I also talked to somebody tonight who is a friend of James Gunn's and has seen the first episode of Peacemaker, or the first 3 episodes of Peacemaker.
Dang, they're moving quick.
Yeah, and they loved it. They said it's James Gunn returning more back to his more trauma-esque and super roots. And I thought, okay, I could definitely see that.
Yeah,
and,
super especially.
Yeah, they were big fans of that. They also told me that this person told me that James Gunn is, after he's finishing press, he is packing up and they're shooting Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in Atlanta. So that's kind of...
Now, by trauma, we mean things like the Toxic Avenger, right?
Well, yes, and James Gunn, of course, he wrote Tromeo and Juliet. So he used to work at Troma, and he comes out of there. But I think this is... I think his friend was thinking more along the lines of Slither and Super. That even though those I think had more in common with than more of his Marvel stuff. But from what I understand, from what I've gotten from everybody, and of course the enthusiastic response from all of my fellow YouTube and fellow and female, what do you call it? Can they all be fellow YouTube pundits? Everybody who went to the IMAX headquarters in Playa del Rey saw Suicide Squad the other day, and everyone seemed to just love it. And then I've talked to actually a few industry producers that also saw it, and they loved it too. So that's really exciting to hear. Now, let me ask you both. Did you see the trailer for Dune?
I haven't yet. I've seen just about everything else today. That's the only one I haven't seen so far.
What about you,
I've
But I
been
Jeremiah?
do
avoiding it.
remember the last one.
Yeah, did you see the trailer, Jeremiah?
I've been avoiding it on purpose, but that does bring me to my question I have for you today because I'm noticing a pattern. What is going on with all this money being thrown around to acquire these properties? Because Dune got a
Dude.
ton of money, and we both know Dune is not the most commercial franchise in the world, along with The Exorcist. What was that, yesterday or today?
Today, yeah, that news
And
dropped,
then,
and I have to say,
Knives Out 2.
yeah, I am a little perplexed. I reached out today to somebody I very much trust in the industry, very highly placed person, and I said, you know what? How this isn't even the budgets of the movies. This is just to acquire
just
the rights.
acquire rights.
And I'm
Netflix
like,
must be driving up those bids.
I just, to be honest, when The Exorcist is based on a book, obviously, William Peter Blatty's
Peter Blatty.
the book, which I've read, and of course Blatty. Oh yeah, indeed, he won an Academy Award for his screenplay for the movie in 1973, the 1973 film. So
Great movie.
I don't understand. Like normally, what a producer would do in a rights deal is you buy the rights to the book, and you pay maybe a big rights deal would be a couple $1,000,000. Now, what I do not understand is the economics. I mean, obviously, they had already got their pitch. They had already decided they're going to make 3 movies, and the creative team was all put in
From
place.
Halloween, yeah.
Yeah, the entire team that was making Halloween, and kudos to Ryan Turek, who used to work for Bloody Disgusting, who's worked his way up at Blumhouse through hard work and perseverance. So good for him.
The trenches.
But what I don't understand is, I mean, they haven't even budgeted these movies out, or maybe they have, but a $400 million deal. The same was true of Knives Out, $450 million just to buy the rights to the Lord of the Rings TV series. The exorbitant amount of money, and as it was explained to me by my friend, he said, look, Peacock needed to make a bold move. And I'm like, okay, that's a bold move, but you still ultimately...
Why that franchise?
I don't know. I mean, the funny thing to me about The Exorcist is it's a franchise that's set in rooms. It's not like on the surface of Arrakis where you've got sandworms and ornithopters, and you've got the Fremen and Arakeen and the Harkonnen forces battling the Atreides forces. I mean, I understand this, but I mean, The Exorcist is such an effective film because while there's locations, it's in and around Washington, D.C., and Georgetown, most of it takes place in a house. And it takes place in a house during the day. Yeah. And there's a lot of physical effects, and I'm baffled by the kind of money that they're laying out for this, because even if they make 3 movies, I mean, it wasn't like Halloween was $100 million movie. The whole point with Blumhouse is they're making these movies for a price.
Mm-hmm.
They're making these movies for something that's very economically feasible. So a movie
Robert,
like
I think what comes down to is something that I've heard from you a long time ago, and that is you get what you deserve, not what you deserve, but what you negotiate.
You're absolutely right.
And The Exorcist is a more well-known title in the bigger scheme of things than Dune. In fact, I think a lot of people are really scorned by the David Lynch film, because every time somebody tells me about Dune or I ask something about Dune, the one thing they term is boring.
Yeah, well, look, I'll tell you, this is the thing. I've been talking a lot about this. In 1984, I was in high school, and this Christmas of 1984, there were 2 big science fiction movies coming out. There was 2010 and Dune, and 2010 was an adaptation of Arthur C. Clarke's sequel to 2001.
Remember that?
2010,
that was the
Odyssey.
sequel to 2000.
Yeah, and Dune was coming out. Now, when I was a kid, I was a member of the Science Fiction Book Club, and I was very steeped in science fiction literature because that was still There was
Right.
very
I'm a little bit older than you, just a little bit.
well. Science fiction literature was a big deal. So if you were a science
Exactly.
fiction fan, Star Wars was cool, but if you're going to conventions, you had to be well versed in science fiction literature.
Yeah,
And-
because
and-
everything came from the books back then.
Yes, and Dune was a huge part of
yeah.
that. It was a huge part of that, and I remember I read Dune. I think I told people I was like 12 when I first read Dune, and a
Yeah.
lot of it was a little
Wow.
above me. It was a little difficult to read because of a lot of the terminology and
Yeah.
I didn't understand a lot of the Islamic references
The Muslim
and
references, yeah.
and things like the Landsrad, all these words.
It's pretty
the world.
deep.
But I really
Very dense. Very
yeah.
dense.
I mean, I really liked it a lot. I mean, I thought it was really, really interesting. But I think that what is problematic in the Lynch version, it's a very static movie. I mean, yeah, there's a few scenes where people scuffle, but for the most part, it's really static. I mean, there's not a lot of camera movement in the film. People are stopping talking, and when they're not talking, you're hearing their thoughts. It's not. And while I liked the film, also it was really hampered by its visual effects because they couldn't do a lot of those visual effects. Like there was no way to make the ornithopter's wings flap, so they had these kind of very angular ships and things like that. So I think now
They were kind of limited back then.
very limited, and now we finally have the technology. I mean, let's face it, the sandworms were not that convincing. And the miniature work was very apparently miniature work. And there's a lot of reasons I think that the movie, while I think it's an interesting, I wouldn't call it a failure, but I would say it's underwhelming. And I
John
think that,
Carter syndrome too.
yeah, absolutely. But I think, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it had John Carter syndrome because the same thing happened when that came out in 2012. It's already been done by Star Wars, and now people kind of have that tainted view. Even though Dune came first,
Yeah.
people have the idea, oh, this is just a bootleg ripoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, there was a lot of, obviously, Tatooine was very inspired by Arrakis. But what I think has happened since then, over the last 20 years, is that audiences have become accustomed, whether it was Lord of the Rings, whether it was Game of Thrones, but even these sprawling narratives, whether it's Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. By the way, Bob Odenkirk collapsed on the set of Better Call Saul today when they were filming. I hope he's okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't know anything about his condition. He was taken to the hospital. But anyway, these sprawling narratives, everything from The Sopranos to Outlander to all the science fiction and fantasy shows, people are used to these long, sprawling, extended narratives. Westworld. So I think the audiences are much more accustomed to what Dune is going to deliver.
Yeah.
Dune is going to deliver a sprawling, familial and royal saga, and it deals with prophecy, and there's all kinds of things in it. But I think now audiences are far more they're accepting of these kinds of stories, and they have sort of a shorthand. They already understand a lot of what it is that we're going to see, and I think that because of that, even filmmakers like Denis Villeneuve and his team know how to build those worlds better and utilize the shorthand, because the production teams have the same shorthand that audiences have. So,
yeah, and from the trailer that I saw the last time, it looks really good.
Oh, the trailer, of course, they had an IMAX event where they showed a couple of finished scenes in addition to, including the opening, in addition to the new trailer, which dropped a couple days ago, which I thought was spectacular. And anyone who knows Dune, there's a lot of things, if you've seen the Lynch version, you see played out again. It looks spectacular. I mean, I'm always talking about verisimilitude, and boy, does this movie have it. It truly looks incredible. And, they dropped a piece of Hans Zimmer's score online, which
I saw that. I think I might be able to get it on Spotify later. But
it's incredible. I mean, everybody's talking about how amazing the music is and all that. And I think, look, I'm really excited for all this. I think what we're going to get is something that's really special, and the audiences.
Yeah, well,
are
the thing
primed for
I
that.
think I think the thing that people really have to watch out for is the same thing that happened last time, and that is that the concept of the movie and everything goes over people's heads.
Yeah, I can see that, but I think the idea of the savior idea, the Kwisatz Haderach, the perfect being, and the fact that bloodlines have been manipulated by the Bene Gesserit, and I think that a lot of all the things that are happening in Dune won't go over people's heads anymore, because back in 1984 when the first Dune came out, audiences were like, wait, what is this? And part of the benefits of being in the post-geek singularity is we're all geeks.
Yeah.
Even my mom would have more of a grasp.
So a lot more people know of the lore by now, and there's been more books too.
Yeah, but not just of Dune. I think they're more open. They're more accepting
of ether culturally.
Yes, exactly. And those kinds of larger, sprawling narratives are things that people are much more. Even the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've now had 24 films.
Yeah.
That is one long, and people are following these character lines and who did what to whom and who's involved with whom, and I think we're just more apt, or we understand all this more.
Plus, let's not forget that little television series that they made, 10 years ago or something like that?
Sci-fi, yep.
Yeah, the two. They did Dune and Children of Dune. Of course, they skipped Dune Messiah, which they did kind of do it, but... Yeah, I'm hoping we're going to see the Dune trilogy. I call it the Paul Atreides trilogy.
Gotcha.
Dune, and they're going to call it Dune Prophet, or I guess this Dune is just called like Dune Part 1. I think it says at the beginning, it even says Part 1, but it'll be Dune Prophet, and Dune Messiah.
Rob, why this director and why this budget? I'm still flummoxed, because what are you expecting Dune to make open a weekend? I'm thinking $30 million tops.
Well, look, I think if we were in a non-pandemic situation, I think as the lead up to it is the marketing. I think what this movie is promising, especially after the trailer, it's funny because I've heard people that said, meh, to me, since the trailer dropped, people have said, Rob, I don't understand it. It doesn't look that good. But that usually comes to me from people who are completely unfamiliar with the property.
80% of people are completely unfamiliar with it, though.
Yeah, I know. But I think that the trailer, there's a lot of spectacle and there's a lot of things that are interesting in this new trailer. It's pretty spectacular. But yeah, I think what's interesting is culturally, I hate to say it, but actually there's two things happening. From the time that the first Dune came out, the sixth Frank Herbert Dune novel hadn't even been released. Chapter House Dune came out in 1985, a year later. And I think that, Dune's old.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I always say that, I've always talked about on this show that the half-life of pop culture is 20 years. Most people, because it's a new generation, and most people... I
think the first Dune novels came around the late 70s or something like that.
65.
60s.
Dune was published in 65, yeah, and then they were published as in the late 60s and early 70s, and then Chapter House Dune, the final Herbert Dune novel, was 85. I want to say God Emperor of Dune and Heretics of Dune came out in the 6 years. I don't know. You know what? Why don't I look? When was it
we have
published?
to also keep in mind that not so many people read books these days. That they wait.
Nor do they read books that are, over 50 years old. So God Emperor
and
Dune,
that they're pretty thick. I remember my dad had the original Dune, and that sucker was about that thick in paperback.
Oh yeah, no, it's thick. And God Emperor Dune came out in 81. And I remember when that came out, it was a big deal when God Emperor of Dune came out and that he was coming back. But yeah, I think unfortunately. I think a lot of classic science fiction that I grew up reading is almost forgotten. When I was a kid, Robert Heinlein was like a giant. You ask people who Robert Heinlein is now, they're like, what? Who?
Yeah, clueless.
When we were growing up, we still had Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury and all them other classic writers.
And Robert Heinlein, I remember reading his young adult books. He was writing YA fiction like Glory Road and things like that. And you read all these things, and now they're forgotten. And that's because it's a generational thing. The new generation wants to read the stuff that's theirs.
Rob, how much is Dune making opening weekend? Put a number on it.
Well, look, you know, I
And
can't.
Snake Eyes just bombed.
Yeah, well, it really look. Here's what I believe: if the movie's great, I think it'll do okay. But like for instance, Blade Runner, 2080 or 2049,
Wow.
it flopped because Blade Runner never made money anyway. And the idea that
This is the same situation, isn't it? Or am
well, I
missing
mean,
something?
I don't know. I think it could be a little different, only in the sense that people know that. Look, I think Dune is almost something new to people. They don't know that even the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries is 20 years old, and I think with the stars, and I think the way the film looks, and if you watch this new trailer, I think it's pretty entrancing. And
if nothing else, the people who are in the cast will definitely be a draw. I mean, you got Zendaya, you've got Oscar from the trilogy.
Oscar Isaac. I mean, there's a lot of great people. There's a lot of great people in this movie, and I think
No stars though, Rob. Where are
no,
the stars?
I know. But are there really any stars this year? I mean, it's
Tom Cruise.
he's
The
the
Rock,
only one. Tom Cruise and The Rock. But I'll tell you something. I've heard
Denzel.
Jungle Cruise. Yeah, Denzel too. But even Denzel, you know, he was in The Little Things this year. I know that was a pandemic movie, but still
Lesser Denzel. That's TNT Denzel. He's in TNT mode with that one.
well, he's still doing things like Fences and he's directing and all that.
Yep.
But I do think that it's going to be interesting to see. It's hard to say. Like on the John Campea show today, we were talking about Scott Mance, John, and I were talking about what films do we think are going to be the first movies to $100 million in this day and age, assuming the Delta variant doesn't take hold. And ultimately, after all the movies that are going to come out, as much as I want to say No Time to Die, if you look at the box office,
Spider-Man 3.
Bond film, yep, Spider-Man No Way Home is the only movie that I can absolutely guarantee is going to make $100 million of everything that's coming out until Christmas. Now, I
Yep.
did say other films, Top Gun Maverick, perhaps.
No.
Maybe, I don't know.
Been too long.
People love
I saw
Top
the
Gun.
trailer of that one. That looks really good.
Been
People-
way too long.
Maybe, but I think people know Top Gun. It's like Tom Cruise, but again, who knows? And then
Yeah.
Venom and Carnage. That maybe. I mean, who?
Wild card, definitely wild card.
You know, and I'm hoping that Shang-Chi and Eternals, but they're new movies. People
No.
don't know those characters. They'll never. Yeah, they're not going to make that. The new Bond film. None of the Bond movies have
No.
opened under $100 million.
Yeah.
Over $100 million bucks. So, it's tough. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see where it falls out.
At the
I
most 30, but
I think it'll do more
bad.
than 30.
I feel like Rob, I don't want to be mean, but I feel like it's gonna get 18. I'm gonna put 18 on it. I don't want to put 18 on it, Rob. I'm sorry. I wanted to do. I honestly, okay, in a perfect world, I wish Dune would make 50.
I
wish it
know.
would make 50, but on its best day with no pandemic and the skies are sunny, no one bringing pistols into the first purge, I feel like it would make 45. If it gets perfect reviews and everybody loves it and Zendaya puts it on her Instagram every hour on the hour, still feel like it's not cracked going past 45 on its best day just because of the brand, the age of the story. It's kind of a dark, like you had mentioned when you brought up Westworld. That's a good comparison. I feel like it would have done well on HBO as a mini series.
I
I
totally agree with you.
I don't think film is the right place for Dune. I don't think film is the right place for Denis Villeneuve. I'm sorry, but the audiences are not with him like that. I think he's a great director. I think he's very competent, but I mean, not since what Prisoners has he really broken into the zeitgeist with maybe Sicario.
Sicario's. I think Sicario and Prisoners, but
I feel like Sicario broke the writer more than it broke him.
Yep. Although that film is really well done. I mean, I'll tell you that climax in those tunnels, man.
Yeah,
is
no, I
insane.
love him.
And
But I think
look.
Villeneuve is
I
a
think
great
you're probably
director.
bringing up a good point, and that is a lot of the action blockbusters that we usually get during the summer, especially the superhero movies. I think they're getting all tired of those things, and I think that they'll want to go to the more Well, dare we say it, intellectual properties. And that's where Dune has a chance to shine because it is a very cerebral movie. And
yes, look, I think you're right. I think, look, television has shown people like more, like, look, I loved Mayor of Easttown. The HBO.
I finally watched the first episode last night. It was really good.
It's really good, and her
Beautifully
performance,
shot.
beautifully shot. Her performance is fearless. I think a lot of things, whether it was the Queen's Gambit, would not have been something I thought would catch on, but it certainly did. You know, for a while it was a water cooler show when it first dropped. And Scott Frank, a writer director. Yes. You know, I mean, I saw a trailer for Paul Schrader's new movie, the Card Counter, today, and that was something interesting. I mean, the guy's in his 70s. Another Oscar Isaac movie. I do think people are thirsty for intellectual things that are meaningful, because as we watch, I mean, unfortunately, our political
discourse is infantile.
It's unbelievable how infantile it is. I mean, it's this partisan bickering to the point where we will be bickering. The United States government will be bickering as the rest of the world burns down around us, and people will still be arguing.
Living near Seattle, I know that feeling very well.
Yes, I know, and it's just I've never seen our country in a more ineffectual position. It's maddening. Like we've got issues we need to solve, and yet we're still arguing. Like, we're listening to I don't know if you listened to any of the police talk about what happened in the Capitol on January 6th, but it was horrifying.
Yeah.
It was horrifying to listen to these policemen that were there, and their lives literally were on the line, and they're talking to congressmen that have been downplaying what happened, and listening to these guys, I mean, talking about Americans, talking about what happened to other Americans in our Capitol building. And you're listening to this, and you're like, how is this acceptable? How is any of this acceptable?
It shouldn't be, but...
No, but you listen to it, and you're like... And, you know, the midst of a pandemic, we can't get people to... We've got to... If you have a gain-of-function virus, which is basically a virus that learns, you know, it mutates, it's changing.
I know, we might be locked down again this fall because of the Delta variants.
Well, the thing about it is, what people I don't think is really...
as a weapon.
Yeah. There's a reason why gain-of-function viruses exist, and it's not because of nature. And that's another thing. Like, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but the idea that we are not weaponizing... Hey, we believe that there's hypersonic missiles now. You know, Putin's like, look, we just added, or China's like, we have hypersonic weapons now that you can't defend against because they're too fast. You think... Like, I'll tell you, one of my favorite books I've read, nonfiction books, there was a book called Biohazard. And it was written by Ken Eilbach, who is one of the highest-ranking defectors from the former Soviet Union. And he worked at the Biopreparat, I can't speak it, the Russian, where basically their bioweapons program. And there's a great story in this book where they were weaponizing anthrax. And when you do that, you have dryers that have to dry the anthrax, which means, like, air conditioning and things, they've got vents that go outside because they need to bring air in. Well, what they have to do is you have to make sure that there are filters that keep the anthrax in, because it's lethal. When you breathe it in, it just destroys your respiratory system. Well, one night somebody forgot to they took the filter out, and they forgot to put a new filter in. So this weaponized anthrax was blowing out into this town because they hid this bioweapons facility in the middle of a town. And hundreds, maybe it was thousands of people started dying. And in order to cover it up, they had to say it was tainted meat. So they had to bring all of these and this is inside of Russia. They had to bring all of these doctors in and examine people and find out how many people were going to die, because they basically were pumping weaponized anthrax into the town. And what, you think all that stuff stopped?
They'd at least do it in Siberia.
No, you'd think, but in Siberia we could look there. We'd be like, what are they doing in Siberia? No, they had to hide these things in plain sight. And it's interesting to me. Like, I'm no conspiracy theorist. I'm not, because follow the money, but the idea
you really
that
don't have to be one. You can just follow, like you said, follow the money.
follow the money, follow the activity, and they were experimenting with gain-of-function viruses, which means they were weaponizing viruses. They were weaponizing SARS.
I think I remember hearing something about this on America's Book of Secrets a couple years ago on the History Channel, where they were telling something about some facility out near the Statue of Liberty on some
that's
corned up island or something like that.
No, that's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, in Silence of the Lambs, that's where they were going to put Hannibal Lecter. On the deal they made with him was that he was going to be able to go on that island. I forget the name of it, but
and they're supposed to have
that's a real that is
mutated animals or something.
No,
like
that is a real place where we did viral research. And why am I drawing a blank on what it was called? But yeah, I mean look at the Tuskegee experiments in World War II. Look what we did on our African American soldiers. I mean, how did we were actually giving indigenous people in the United States smallpox infected blankets, which they had no natural immunity against.
We never learned, Robert. We never learned.
No.
Right.
I mean, look,
we've got a lot of good zombie movies to prepare us. We should all know. Go to your local Walmart and stock up. Glock 19, something more versatile, something semi-automatic.
Here we go again.
It's just but it is. Back to the whole movie thing. I do think that this idea that we now live in a world where science is being. It's funny. We carry around supercomputers in our pockets, and what we do is deny science as we type into them. And follow.
We use science to deny science.
Yes, and man, that's where we're at now. That's where we're at.
But circling back around to my point on Dune, what's going on with the budgets on these properties? Because I think budgets are expanding, but we're getting decreased returns on each film. And Dune could have easily been made for half as much as it was made for.
I'm afraid, Jeremiah, it goes back to one thing and one thing only: the writing.
Well, I mean, look, the script for Dune is great.
I remember you had it on your show one time.
Yeah, I got a copyright strike. Warner Brothers hit me with a copyright, not just a copyright takedown. Oh yeah, they took down my episode.
But I heard it, and it sounded really good.
It was really good. They've changed it. Of
course.
They've changed the beginning. The script that I read opened with Duncan, Idaho, orbit diving. He was dropped off, and he dove from orbit and landed to go meet with the Fremen. That was the opening of the film. Now, apparently, it opens with a voiceover with Chani explaining who the Fremen are, which I think is actually a pretty good way to open the movie. It gets Chani in the movie earlier, and it gets people. The Fremen people were always something that I thought were lost in both the Lynch version and the TV miniseries, and I think it's really interesting that they've bolstered. I mean, certainly the Fremen presence has been bolstered in the script, and I think it's better for it. But I think, and that's how the movie opens with Chani talking. It's interesting because after the Duncan, Idaho scene, the script I read had Mother Mohiam, Charlotte Rampling's character, who takes the Gom Jabbar to Paul, and there was kind of like a Man of Steel opening where she's explaining the history of the universe the same way that Princess Irulan explained the beginning of the universe in the David Lynch's version. Because for those of you who've seen David Lynch's version, in Denis Villeneuve's version, you do not meet the Padishah Emperor. You do not meet the Spacing Guild. They're in the background. You don't understand that the Emperor has engineered. I mean, you actually do, because you hear Fahrenheit. What's that?
I was just saying it might work if they're streamlining the story down.
I think it works. I think it works really, really well, because you realize that this is a feud between two warring families. It's the Hatfields and the McCoys,
Exactly.
And it's all about money and economics and power. And
Yep.
I think when you saw Lynch's Dune, they drop you into this, and you're like, who are these people?
Too
Who is the
much.
Padishah Emperor Shaddam the Fourth? What is it? What are they
Yeah,
doing? And
overload.
why does he not like the Atreides? Why does he want them destroyed? How do they threaten his power? You
You're
know?
kind of like going through the Stargate, and all of a sudden you're going in the middle of war. It's like, what the hell's going on? Where's everybody going?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Need a little bit of calibration there.
So let me ask you this, Jeremiah: Have I talked to you since Loki?
Okay.
Have I talked to you since Loki ended?
No, sir. We have not had the pleasure of meeting of the minds on comics in quite a while.
I was actually thinking about you, and I've got to know, what did you think of Loki?
I don't know. Honestly, I want to be fair. I didn't think it was that good, but I do want to be fair because I don't have the full picture, and I think it's a few different things going on. It kind of conspired against all the Disney Plus shows, and it kind of culminated with Loki. Of course, there were rewrites, budgetary constraints, COVID constraints, shooting location constraints. Then
Yeah,
on
because
top of that,
everything was made about a couple of years ago,
exactly.
and so all the movies that were done we're now seeing now, and those that were shut down we'll see in like maybe the next 6-8 months or so.
Well, I
Yep.
mean, I think that something like Loki, I think of all of the things, I think Loki might have suffered the most.
Yeah, it was going to be the most effects heavy, definitely.
Yeah.
It relied on a variety of locations even more. And then I think also the serialized storytelling that Marvel's using is handicapping Loki the most because it is the most dependent upon the overall mythology and the overarching story that's happening in the Marvel universe as a whole. But the show stops on a cliffhanger and never resolves any of the issues it brought up at the beginning of the series. Where the Falcon and Winter Soldier, it brought some things up and then resolved them. WandaVision brought some things up and resolved them. Actual Justice Warrior had a really good video on YouTube. He's normally a political channel, but he had a really
That's what usually
video,
gets in the way nowadays.
that they just made a good point that they give you the illusion of change, but by the end they give you information that they can just catch you up on in the next live action movie, and they strike a fine balance. But Loki just needed more. It needed the actress that played Sylvie probably should have been recast, but I respect her performance. It was very solid, but she definitely didn't give that same intensity. Tom Hiddleston basically carried the whole series. It was his whole. If he wasn't there, if he wasn't on his A game, it would be unwatchable. He carried the whole thing. Gugu's character also seemed like she was abbreviated or wasn't fully fleshed out. That there was a dynamic there between her and Owen Wilson. I feel like that either was left on the cutting room floor or just wasn't elaborated upon enough. Overall, just the pacing and the dynamics of where storylines picked up and dropped off felt odd because we had an extended amount of time between Owen Wilson and Loki in the first episode, which would lead you to think we're going to be spending more time with these characters doing things because we start with them talking, and that's just a foundation for them to then explore each other's characters through action. But then it turns into a love story, and then the love story is mostly through talking and sitting.
Yeah, they did a lot of sitting and talking and walking and talking, and not a whole lot of action from what I hear.
Well,
the
and
return
also,
of the Rise of the Silver Surfer Cloud Monster too. And
well, that character was in that.
that was a cloud though in the comics.
Yeah, in the comics it was a cloud.
But I feel like there was a more visually engaging way we could have told that story with less clouds, more Richard E. Grant. He was great.
He was great. Loved him. I'm a huge fan of his.
But then we didn't get enough of a sense of the variants as well. Like there were some interesting variants, but we never really got to see any of them or interact with them. Or overall, it just felt it felt abbreviated. I guess that was my key concern. I don't know how you felt about it, but it felt abbreviated, and I felt like the writer they hired didn't get to be his true, authentic self, his Rick and Morty self, and I feel like the director didn't get to be her sex education, snappy, patter, quick editing, back and forth character development stuff either. So I feel like we kind of got watered down versions of both of them. But I don't know how you felt.
Nope, I think you're right there. I am right there with you.
But it had a lot of great potential. And I'm looking forward to season 2. I hope they get the opportunity to go back in, rejigger some things. I'd like to see just a brighter story, a brighter, as in literally like the design of the characters, the way it's shot. It was a very dark series, and it didn't really match the character or match the tone they were going for either. So, especially when Jonathan Majors came in and he was really bright and kind of effervescent.
Yeah.
But then the show was really dark. It kind of threw me for a loop, and it made it seem like he was going to have a kind of like a heel turn or, betray them in some way. But it was just it was like a Willy Wonka or like a Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain thing, but it wasn't bright like that.
All of that seemed a little odd to me because for the audience, there's no setup at all.
Yeah.
You don't know who that character is other than he who remains. What does that mean?
It was very confusing. Loki was confusing. It was confusing. I don't know. I guess this is a good time for me to ask you this. But overall, doesn't it seem like Disney's a little confused right now? I feel like Black Widow kind of hit them, like they didn't really know what to do with that. Like that's been kind of a right cross that they're trying to recover from. The coronavirus pandemic is kind of put them in a weird place with Jungle Cruise and that being released on Disney Plus and in person. And I feel like out of everybody coming out of the pandemic, Disney is the most perturbed, I can't think of the word.
I completely agree with you. It's
flummoxed. That was the word, flummoxed.
Flummoxed is a great word for it. Look, I liked Black Widow. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. And what I really liked about it was the relationship between Black Widow and Florence Pugh, Yelena's character. I really thought here was the story of these two sisters connecting. I mean, yeah, they had the standard. To me, it you know what it felt like? Someone asked me about it, and I said, you know what it was? It was the Tomorrow Never Dies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It does look like that. Now that you said that, that is exact. I haven't seen it, but that is exactly what it is.
Yeah,
and stuff.
Tomorrow Never Dies is fine. It's not great Bond.
That's beautiful.
Serviceable Bond, which I liked it. Like I like watching it. I like they actually went to Norway and shot on location. There was a lot of great outdoor work. I like the characters. I like all the stuff that was going on in the movie, and it felt like mid-level Bond to me, which is not necessarily great. But on the other hand, I think they gave us exactly what they were going for.
Yes, that was the disappointing part.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I don't like is when people take a swing and a miss. They take a swing and they miss. What I felt is that if they had made Black Widow early on, like if they had it coming out right on the heels of Captain America Civil War, where everybody split, they all went their separate ways, and we got this sort of interesting Black Widow side story that they dropped on us like a month after Civil War left the theaters.
Yeah, would have been fun.
I think everybody would have dug it, and then they would have brought back David Harbour, and you would have actually because they set up a meeting, like they set up this thing. Like, why wasn't David Harbour in fucking Endgame? How great would it have been to see that character show up in Endgame and stand tall with Captain America against Thanos and maybe lose his life? I mean, I would have loved that. And I just would like to have seen that character show up.
It did kind of seem like things were a little out of order from what I could tell.
Yeah, I mean, they hadn't even made it. They weren't going to do that at the time. But the story they told was, and I'll tell you another thing that hampers that movie. There's even a joke. Well, it's a dark joke when Yelena's talking about how she has no uterus, how she's had a hysterectomy. Mm-hmm. The idea that these women are the Marvel Cinematic Universe is completely neutered. It is the most sexless place in the world.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of the other channels proclaim this the MCU.
Well, I would say not
I
not
wouldn't
necessarily.
even. Yeah, it's
I
kind of
wouldn't say
neutral,
that at all
honestly.
because if they did, they would have hit harder the fact that these women, the widows, they have their reproductive organs ripped from them because so they don't want to get pregnant on the job. You know, they're not going to let
Yeah,
these women be trained like and the thing is, we had the movie Black Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence that basically tells the same story, but it gets into the fact that these women are masters
exactly.
of seduction. They're taught how to seduce and, let's face it, fuck their marks. You know, and they're going
Yeah.
after people, and the idea that in the Marvel
Mhm.
Cinematic Universe, sexuality and the fact that they have their reproductive organs removed so they can
Yeah.
fuck
It's just the point.
indiscriminately. You know, and it's a little because that's part of their what they do. And I feel to go that direction is a little disingenuous and not deal with here you're dealing with the fact that this family is coming back together, but two of the members of the family, the daughters, are incapable of having families of their own. So the familial bonds they've built with each other, like I thought one of the scenes where Florence Pugh breaks down and she says, "This is my family. You know, this is very real to me." And she comes out and she goes, "I'm not going to have a family. This is it, man. This is and I thought they were delving into some pretty interesting
Yeah,
territory.
it's
Now
heavy.
it was done fleetingly, but still it was there, and I thought that there was a lot of interesting stuff going on. Of course, by the end of the movie, you're in this you're having this old helicarrier falling out of the sky and this giant action scene, and it gets all a little ridiculous. But I liked the movie. I didn't dislike it the same way I like Tomorrow Never Dies. Is it a great Bond movie? No, but it's good. If I'm gonna sit
Well,
down, I'll watch it.
um, maybe there's no hope for this at all. But is there any chance? I was hoping it would happen with Falcon and Winter Soldier, but it looked like it didn't. But is there any chance that we'll ever get the Marvel equivalent of a Suicide Squad or a Birds of Prey that isn't a lower key? Because I feel like Black Widow was a good opportunity to go the Bourne route, and scale down the budget, scale down the level of pyrotechnics, focus on her as an individual character, focus on her in an espionage scenario like an Atomic Blonde, like
Yeah.
what you brought up with Jennifer Lawrence Red Sparrow. Just something that serves the character, because I don't necessarily think Black Widow functions very well in a solo
I
big
always thought that
crazy
Marvel
Winter
was the
Soldier
one
type
that set
scenario.
the trends, not copy them. I always thought that they were the ones who came up with the
Well,
idea of their superheroes being more human instead of just trying to follow, because that's what DC is trying to do.
I think though that Black Widow is a character that I mean, if you go back and Natasha Romanoff was in the 70s and in the 80s. I mean, she was
Yeah,
always a variation of a secret agent, which was Bond-esque or
right,
Or
modestly
right.
even going the
blazed.
girl
Or
with the dragon tattoo route, maybe like a righteous
oh man, I
hacker.
would love to, especially the Swedish version. I
Yeah,
mean that.
exactly.
But the problem is, look, the problem is also the Marvel Cinematic Universe is hampered by the fact that it has to be a family franchise. Ultimately,
True.
it has to be a family. And look, I thought, it's funny. Sometimes I'll go in and watch chunks of movies like late night when I'm drifting off to sleep. I'll
Yeah.
watch run sequences of movies that I really like. I
Mhm.
love the first 30 minutes of Endgame. I love it.
Yeah, it
I
was
think
good. Me
it's
too.
sprawling, it's epic, it's all character based. And it's all these. I love
Paul
seeing
Rudd
all these.
does a lot of great work in the beginning of that
Oh,
movie
so good
to
when he
keep
comes,
it grounded, keep it from
keeps it grounded. I mean, I
going off
watched
the
it
rails.
all the way through the time they went to Tony Stark's house, and
That's about when it starts to go off the rails.
well, I mean, I really it
Yeah,
goes. What it's so tightly focused on character. Even when they go and they kill Thanos, and you think like, oh, we're fucked. And then there's that really long when there's that fade out on the back of Thor and it goes out to black and it just says 5 years later. And I'm like, wow, this is.
Now that's something that I'd like to ask you, Robert, and maybe you've had these situations when you're doing a movie or you're observing somebody do a movie, and that is you think that the story and the movie is going one way, And then all of a sudden it derails off and it goes into a completely different direction. And I've noticed this with a lot of the TV series that I've seen from Star Trek and other things, to where they'll get rid of somebody like a director or a showrunner or something. And then all of a sudden, when that happens, the story goes completely off.
Oh,
And there's a total change.
the greatest example of that is the 5th season of The West Wing, when they fired Aaron Sorkin because he was doing too much blow and he wasn't on schedule. I mean, and then the Tommy Schlamme, who ran the show, came in, and when you don't have the writing behind I don't think I've ever seen a TV show fall further than the 5th season of West Wing.
But
look,
does it happen in movies sometimes?
well, I mean, look, I think that
Definitely.
it does, but people aren't usually changed midstream in movies. It's usually something is wrong with it. See, I'll tell you what's
One Solo, a Star Wars story is the biggest one.
well, yeah, but those were both Rogue One and look. I think what's really interesting.
Solo more. Skip Rogue One.
Well, I think with Rogue One, they realize that, oh, wait a minute, we're making a Star Wars movie where we're introducing all these characters and their function is all to die. And I think that, whereas here's what I think is really interesting. And I have, by the way, this is complete speculation on my part.
Okay.
So the idea that they're going to make Rogue One, the idea came from John Knoll. Let's tell the story of who stole the plans for the Death Star. Great idea. And let's tell this story. And they said, we're going to base it on like movies of the 60s, The Dirty Dozen, and Where Eagles Dare, all these movies that we're going to make it a man or aliens and women, men on a mission movie. And that's what we're going to do. And I'm sure everybody read the script and probably fucking loved it. They start shooting the movie. And Gareth Edwards, who's directing it, it probably was fine. But they're looking at this going, wait a minute. This movie is huge. It's dark as fuck. Like, what?
Where is the levity?
Yeah, and they're like, wait a minute, this is Star Wars. And they're like, but we're making a war movie about...
No smile.
And I'm sure that's what happened. I fell
asleep on the movie, Rob. I won't lie.
Well, I mean...
It was too dark. It was too dark. I fell asleep.
I mean,
it was... I fell asleep on Solo, too.
But it was like they made this movie and they thought they were doing this great thing. And it's like...
What did they do to Donnie Yen, Rob?
Dude, don't get me started. I mean, look, if I had made... Here's the problem with Rogue One, in my mind. If I was in charge of making that movie, here's how I would have changed it. It would have been a half an hour longer, and you would have met all of those characters in their milieu. You would have met...
Sorcerer.
That's exactly right. It's the beginning of Sorcerer. I've said that before. It would be fun. Like, you'd meet Donnie Yen's character, Choet Inouye, and you'd meet Baz Mal. How do you pronounce it?
Homeboy with the gun.
Yeah, you'd find these two guys at the height of their powers. They were having a good time. They could finish each other's sentences, and they were there at the Jedi Temple and all this, and the fucking Empire shows up. And they're run out of town, and they're like, "We got to get the hell out of Dodge," and they barely escape with their lives. And they kind of did that when you met Mads Mikkelsen, but no, Saw Gerrera. That should have been. You should have had scenes where you meet all these people, and there were scenes where you see them in their Star Wars milieu, and they all get routed.
So you kind of get an introduction to each character.
Yeah, and because you don't in the movie, you find them. Like, when you meet them, you don't know who they are, and I think that's a big problem with the film. And what here, the Man on a Mission movie, the whole premise of it is you meet the men that go on the mission. You know who they are. Then when they all start to interact, the differences in them is where the entertainment comes from.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are all trying to work together, and like you said, Jeremiah, the movie's just does not have any levity at all.
But Solo, I feel like Solo was a worse example because you could tell that material was written for other directors, and Ron Howard just shot it straight. and there was no snap like to the editing for the jokes. They just were flat. He just shot them. They read the lines. All right, you read it, cut, great. There was no spontaneity. There was no pizzazz to it the same way you could tell there was pizzazz in maybe like a 21 Jump Street or a Lego movie where the original directors would have given it that extra little kick, the little flair. It was just shot.
Well,
there was no
again
life.
what a lot of people like. Here's one of the things I find difficult to deal with in our.
It's like reading someone else's jokes. Like
well,
if I
yeah,
just told you a Dave Chappelle stand-up set, just with no inflection.
In our online pundit space, Kathleen Kennedy is painted out as public enemy number one. Yet, she hired these
directors, but true.
She hired these directors. She hired Lord and Miller to make Solo, and at the time, it probably seemed like a good idea. Here's the problem. Yeah, I think so too. Here's the problem. They are underneath a corporate structure, Disney, that is expecting a 4-quadrant, easily digestible family movie. I mean, they have what they need. They get what they need. Well, Kathleen Kennedy started out making some really interesting choices, whether it was Josh Trank on the heels of Chronicle doing a Boba Fett movie. I mean, she was doing all these things. None of them worked out, but that wasn't any fault of hers. Like Josh Trank's Fantastic Four melted down after Chronicle. I mean, you look at Chronicle, there's I mean, that's what Kevin Feige. Yeah, yes. And the Lord Miller hire was a good hire, and people are like, well, Rob, how come she allowed things to go so far? Well, because it's really difficult. They probably, and I'll bet you, I have no reason in saying this, I'll bet you Kathleen Kennedy liked what they were doing. I bet I bet you saw that snap. And it was Lawrence Kasdan, Mr. I wrote Empire, I wrote Jedi, I wrote Indiana Jones, who wrote the script, who was like, what is this? This is not what we agreed on. Yeah. And of course, he, a former direct, probably, and Kathy Kennedy's known him for 30 years, longer, and all part of the family. And he freaks out, and she's like, I don't know what you got to get rid of him, whatever, put in a difficult position, and all this stuff. And people don't remember that it was her who put Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau together too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she hit on that one.
And that's the whole thing. It's like you can't hate. And look, hiring J.J. Abrams, who everyone knew, Kathleen Kennedy's known J.J. Abrams since he was 16 years old. I mean, it's like these people all know each other. They're all friends. They've all worked together. It seems like a good idea at the time. I think J.J. Abrams is supremely untalented. I think he's probably one of the most untalented big-budget film directors that's ever worked in Hollywood.
Dare I say a hack?
The thing is, though, he knows how to utilize and hire great people.
I like Mission Impossible 3.
But the problem is, I mean, he's made 5. He's made 5 science fiction movies that I think are all terrible. Star Trek 09, Star Trek Into Darkness. What's that?
I was just saying, I was agreeing. It's not his forte. Sci-fi.
No, and Super 8 and the 2 Star Wars movies. I mean, my God, people bitch and moan and complain about The Last Jedi. I'm like,
Force Awakens is the worst movie I've seen in my life. Period.
Force Awakens is where the problem begins.
It is the worst film of all time, period.
Why isn't everybody... People are angry about He-Man and Skeletor dying. Why weren't people angry about the worst, dumbest death in cinema history, which was Harrison
why did Han Solo die like that?
I mean, come on, man. And terrible.
Rob, okay. The reason why I say it's the worst movie of all time is because it's a fact. And also because they had so much time between episode 3 and The Force Awakens. We've had, a decade?
Yeah.
For people to go in, look at the extended universe stuff, look at the comic book stuff, rip off of some other people's ideas.
I think Jeremiah, I think I got a reason for a lot of what's going on now, especially with all these franchises.
Please enlighten us.
One, they've either gone dormant as in Star Trek or Star Wars, or somehow they're not as popular as they used to be, and they get lulled into a thing where nobody's working on it, nobody's doing anything with the property, and so these people see an opportunity to inject their agendas or what have you, and they buy up these properties, and then they forget all the source material, or don't even
care to acknowledge
refer to it, and just make up their own stories, sometimes as they go along, and they end up making a worse product that nobody wants to watch because they can see all through their bullshit.
Well, here's
any directors. Oh, I'm sorry.
We might have been losing you there a little bit. What were you saying? Oh no, we got you.
Hello.
Yep, we got you.
Oh,
yeah, we got you, Jeremiah.
Would any director take the trade of smaller budget, more control? Or are we past that point where there's no longer an option? You will make $100 million tentpole for us, and that is, it will be 4-quadrant. Doesn't matter.
Well, look, I
regardless
think
of whether or not you want to.
I think when it comes to a movie like Star Wars, there's no way you can't make a Star Wars movie with less money with the people that are involved. Look, I have often said that a Star Trek movie, there's no justification when they made Star Trek 09 that a Star Trek movie would cost $175 million. There's nothing there was nothing analogous in history.
There's no need.
And what happens is you have people who are making these decisions that are like, okay, Star Trek is our franchise, just like Transformers is our franchise. And you're like, wait a minute. Star Trek and Transformers have nothing to do with one another. In terms of monetary, nothing, zero. I understand you want them to, but they don't. And
what's the comp there?
I mean, there's a lot of people that don't understand it. And J.J. Abrams has his entire apparatus that when you hire J.J. Abrams, you don't hire just J.J. Abrams. You hire Bad Robot, which means all of their infrastructure, all of their people. You bring in all of their editors. You're now paying it's like Peter Jackson. When you hire Bad Robot, you hire everything that's underneath the building they exist in.
Wingnut is coming in with Peter Jackson.
Yeah, you're paying for all of it. And it's like, look, man, the way to save the Star Trek franchise is you make a great Star Trek movie for $85 million.
Back to its roots.
That's right. And you know what? If you can't make that movie, then you shouldn't be making it.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of fans out there who are making just fine movies with their own dollars and hardly any money.
Oh, I didn't want to get into that tonight, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help but see your video earlier today.
No. I mean, look, then again, it comes down to the people that want to make movies for the right reasons, not because they're a self-aggrandizing narcissist that don't. And
I thought that was the point of becoming a movie director, Rob.
No. I mean, look, I think the reason people become making movies is really, really, really hard to do.
Oh yeah,
and it is a monumentally difficult task. I've often said it's like Rumpelstiltskin spinning straw into gold. There is an alchemy, there is a magic to it, and it's
not with The Force Awakens. That's the one exception, Rob. That was our one. We knew that it was gold in the straw. It was the reverse, though, somehow.
Yeah, no, it should have been. I don't think I've ever walked out of a movie and initially after it was over and hated a movie more than I hated The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I threw my popcorn at the screen.
I mean, terrible. I couldn't believe it. I was completely flummoxed was the word.
Yes, that was a flummoxing.
I was like, what? What is this?
Flabbergasting experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you can boil it all down to one scene that was never made, and that was Han, Luke, and Leia, and 3PO, and R2-D2, and everybody in the same scene at the same time, and we never got it.
That doesn't make any sense. So, okay, Rob, if we could trade out the trilogy that we got for one mini series. Let's call it 2 hours of George Lucas. Whatever the Wills was happening with that. Would you rather see what he was going to do with the Wills, or would you just go ahead and rock out with these 3 we got?
No, I would do neither.
No,
no. You know what I would do? You know what here's what I find interesting, and the same is true of Star Trek. Star Trek has had 40 years of people that loved Star Trek writing Star Trek novels. And these are people that are steeped,
and here's what they did with it.
Steeped in the lore, and they know Star Trek and Star Wars like the back of their hands. Like if you go back and you look, for instance, if you look at in 1991, well, yeah, the Thrawn trilogy and the Dark Empire trilogy, those things are not entirely satisfying. However, they both are very interesting. And there's a lot of, and you look at it and you're clearly like, okay, the people that have Cam Kennedy and Tom Veitch and Timothy Zahn, they've looked at the Star Wars universe and they're like, I get it. I understand why this universe works, and they extrapolated on what came before, and they gave us some great science fiction properties. And you look at this and you're like, okay, so if you're going to make, here's the thing, no one in Hollywood, George Lucas, maybe Dave Filoni, but no one in Hollywood is ever going to look at a fucking novel series or comic books when they're hired to do something.
Right.
Because they're not hired to do that. Like, I do not know why Dark Horse was publishing some incredible Predator and Aliens comics. And their Alien versus Predator comic was really good. And I'm like, you look at this comic and you're like, why not adapt this? And the answer is because nobody at 20th Century Fox ever read that fucking comic. They don't know, and they don't know. And you would think, like, if I ran a studio that owned a franchise property, like, say, I don't know, Star Trek.
Yeah.
I would say, okay, I'm going to hire, well, I mean, I know Star Trek, but I would hire call it a story group or whatever. I don't want you to pitch me stories. I'm going to, because I know Star Trek, I'm going to curate, I'm going to give you 50 of my favorite Star Trek novels and comics. Yeah. And I want you to take those and I want you to give a report on them or rate them or whatever. And I'm like, we're going to make one of these 50. And we're going to win.
Right answer somewhere in there, yeah.
Well, and the people that run these, they have no idea that these, I mean, they sit there and they take story pitches all day. Well, how about people that already pitched their stories and wrote novels and wrote comics on the same franchise?
And especially there's the fact that a lot of the movies that we all loved from the old days were actually from novels.
Well, yeah.
I mean, if you just go from the novels that are already written, I mean, there's your source material right there.
Well, but here's the thing. I did an interview with Diane Duane 2 years ago when I first started this channel that I've never dropped on the channel. She's one of my favorite Star Trek novelists, and we talk about this for 2 hours. I'm going to direct more of the medical lecture series that I work on in Portland in the week of the 23rd of August. And when I'm gone, I'm gonna drop some interviews that I've done.
Okay.
As it'll be like my vacation series, even though I'm gonna be working 8 days a week. But that's gonna be one of the I know, right? It's like the Beatles, man. You never work just 7 days a week. And that interview with her is amazing because she talks about that. Like, we have a whole environment, like a story is a story. But in Hollywood, if it comes from a tie-in novel, or what's so funny is the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the most lucrative, most successful Hollywood franchise in history by a wide margin.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, the people that run Star Wars, I mean, that's not true with Dave Filoni and stuff, but the powers that be at Disney, they're like, I'll bet you they've never thought to even look at the Star Wars comics that Dark Horse published.
They exist.
Don't know. I have no idea. They don't know about the novels. Cool. They look at those things because because everyone in Hollywood makes fun of them. They're like novels. Tie-in novels are the lowest of the low, and they're the thought that they could actually have great stories that
Yeah,
could be
be good
mine.
or competent.
And it's funny to me because I look at Kevin Feige. His great success is like, fuck it.
Vaguely translating the comic book a little bit.
That's it. Like we already have all these stories.
Super detailed, yeah.
Age of Ultron, not a very good comic, but it was, and I that movie gets better and better the more I see it. It is.
Hey, Age of Ultron is a fantastic film. People
Dude,
need to just back off. The ending is great.
I am with you 100%.
At the end.
It's only gotten better as the years go by. So much of the MCU that we know and love was established in that movie. And first of all, I fucking love Ultron. But
great casting.
Yeah.
Ultron and Vision, great casting.
A great casting. And continues to resonate. I mean, I want to see Ultron again. But
James Spader was great.
But gentlemen, let me ask. I mean, this is a fantastic conversation. I would love to bring some other people on. Not that this isn't great, but we've been talking for a while.
All right.
And I would love to bring. This is a fantastic. I want you both to come back, but I'm going to. Would you mind if I brought some more people in? By the way, they have a tough act to follow with the two of you.
Well, thank you, Rob. It's always a pleasure. Come on.
I want to thank you both for being here. This was a great conversation. Thank you. And we will see you both again. Jeremiah, it's great to catch up with you. And William, how's my home state? Always good to hear from you, too. I'll see you guys later. Well, that was fantastic. I love those guys. And for those of you who might not know, I'm going to put this in. Oh, Stubble McShave is here. Stubble. Well, hello, Stubble McShave. Stubble's here. Is anyone else joining? Who else is in the queue? I'm going to put your name down. Oh, wait, is anyone else? I guess no one else is here. Hang on. All right, Stubble, hold on. I got to put you in the show. I'm going to copy the link. I'm going to set it down if anybody wants, because I'm hoping all you just get new information every day over. Okay. So, yep. There's a link if anyone's going to come on. Edison Volker says, give Jeremiah his own show. I'm ready to give Jeremiah his own show, to be honest. Yeah, I think he's got a lot to say. He knows his stuff. And Jordan Britt is here too. And I'm going to give me a minute while I put everyone in the show. And get your names up there. Jordan, hang on. How are you, sir? Well, I would imagine because you're in Florida, right? What are you doing up? Oh, well, I want to hear that. Hang on. Because you're my one space connection. Okay, hang on. I gotta put you in. Gotta put you in both. So hang on. Give me a moment and let me add you to both of you. I love this. I got information coming from space, and also from Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time universe. Stubble. I feel like I got my biggest space fan on this channel and my biggest Wheel of Time fan. And the fact that you guys are my fans, you're not anyone else's. I claim you as my own. I like that a lot. So, I mean, how many people have people like the two of you? Not many. Not many. All right, Jordan, let me get you in. I mean, wait a minute. Isn't it like 4:30 in the morning for you? Oh, it's 3:31. Well, isn't your husband like, what the fuck are you doing up? What are you on the phone? Are you sexting with some dudes or what? Come on.
No, he's not like that. Besides, I'm too old for that shit anyway. So
you're never too old. Come on now.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, however you identify, welcome Jordan Britt from Florida and Stubble McShave. You know him, you love him. He's all the way from Sweden. He's our biggest Wheel of Time fan. Which, by the way, they just keep dropping more and more information. So before we find out about space, Stubble, I will ask you, how are you tonight, sir?
Yeah, I'm great. It's morning here. It's 10:32.
Oh, so you're up?
Yeah.
Well, so What's the latest? What's the wheel of time? What's the news? What's
Oh.
the haps?
I mean, nothing new directly since the last time. It's
God damn it. Come on, Stubble.
they don't drop every day. They drop once a week or something.
All right, well, give us a recap. What do they have at Comic-Con at home?
Yeah, they had an interview with the showrunner, and they dropped the teaser poster.
They did the poster, and then let me ask you, with all this new information they're dropping, are you optimistic about the show? Do you keep getting more optimistic?
Yeah, I'm optimistic about the show. I know people are hesitant about the show, but from what I know of the showrunner and the people involved, I'm confident in the show.
All right. Well, now, Jordan,
Yeah.
you stayed up. I don't want to keep you waiting. You've said you've got space news.
Yes, we have quite a bit of space news, but I'll get through it real quick. Okay, recently, late last weekend, the Russians launched the Nauka science module on a proton rocket from Kazakhstan. Now that new science module will be replacing Russia's Pirs module, which is what they used to use for EVAs in the Russian section of ISS.
So will this new section be on the ISS, or are they teaming up with China?
No, this will be on ISS. China and Russia aren't really going to be working together in space. They say that, but it's mostly wishing at this point.
Yeah, because we're going to go to Europa with the Russians, just like in 2010 for real.
Yeah. Speaking of Europa, there has been an announcement that the Europa Clipper, which we launched in where's my data? Will be launched in 2024 aboard a Falcon Heavy rocket. Now, that's the Falcon Heavy with 2 strap-on boosters. So that should be an excellent launch. And it will arrive at Europa in April 2030.
So wait a minute. Will this be the first time that the Europa Clipper is a NASA, it's a JPL probe, right?
Right, yes.
It's being built in the vehicle assembly building at JPL.
Yeah.
Okay. Will this be the first time that a JPL probe of this importance is launched on a Falcon rocket?
I believe so, yes.
So SpaceX is now being entrusted to, that would be like SpaceX launching the Curiosity.
Yeah.
But this could be our most significant, if things work out, our most significant in terms of fact-finding. We might find more out about Europa than any other, in terms of life, planet or moon in the solar system. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. Considering that when the Falcon 9 Heavy was first launched, it launched Elon's Tesla into a heliocentric orbit around the sun. So obviously it works.
Man, I hope one day some alien race finds that and brings it back and auctions it off on eBay. They're going to need, it'll be like in Star Trek 4, they need currency. They'll show up and they're like, well, we don't have any fucking money. So they'll be like, well, what can we do? Well, we're going to go get that. We're going to go get that car. We'll bring it down and we'll sell it. And that'll be their first, they'll use that as seed money to join the human race.
Right. Did I mention that the Europa Clipper will arrive at Europa in April 2030. It's going to have to make at least
It's going to take 5 years to get there?
It takes a long time to get to the outer planets.
Great. I'll be fucking dead then.
No, you won't.
Probably.
You have something to live for. Just look at
that's true. That is true. But you know what? If I get pancreatic cancer or some shit like that, there's nothing I can do.
No.
Well, wait. It is only 20. So it's only 10 more years. I mean, that's all right. Okay. That's before I go totally impotent. All right. I'm fine. So
Okay,
2030 that's really 2030.
It's going to have to make 2 gravitational assists by Mars in order to get to Jupiter, and then it's going to be in a highly inclined orbit, using gravitational assists from Jupiter and from Ganymede to nudge itself into orbit around Europa.
Space flight's hard.
Yep.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Do you watch Anton Petrov's channel?
I think I know of him. I watch mostly Scott Manley's channel. He had a really interesting story that I want to tell you about. There's a possibility that the ascent module part of the Apollo 11 lunar module spacecraft may still be in orbit around the moon. Most of them were deorbited and crashed deliberately into the moon to test the seismometers that the astronauts left on the surface. But there's a possibility, very slim though, that Apollo 11's module, lunar,
The LEM.
Yeah, the LEM, the ascent stage is still in orbit around the moon.
Well, can't they track that? Can't they find it?
Yes, but it's very difficult to do.
Yes, but I mean, they would. By the way, how cool would that be?
They're not really sure where exactly to look because it might have already crashed, and if they think they know roughly where the orbit may be if it's still in orbit.
You know, the moon landing is part of Wheel of Time. You know that?
I did not know that.
No, it's one of the old mythologies that's been changed over time. So it's land traveling in the belly of an eagle to the moon.
Oh, okay.
So they confuse John Glenn with with Neil Armstrong, but so.
Yeah.
Well, at least they believe it happened.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, another news story that popped up about 4 days ago. The Ingenuity helicopter made its longest flight on Mars,
And it went beyond how they thought. It went longer than they thought it would last. Right?
Yeah, right. It was at altitude of 39 feet, and it traveled 233 meters in a loop path around the Perseverance rover and some waypoints that they had picked out from the Martian surface. And our last bit of space news is Boeing is getting ready to launch its CST-100 Starliner spacecraft July 30th. And this will be the second test flight for Boeing's manned spacecraft. This will be taking astronauts to ISS as well as the Crew Dragon, rather. So be on the lookout for that launch.
I will definitely be on the lookout for that launch. I would love. I mean, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Obviously, over the last couple weeks, we've seen both Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic successfully launch their spacecraft with fully manned crews into low Earth orbit. One went past I want to say the Helium Imperium, but it's
the
not.
Carbon line.
The carbon line.
Yeah.
Blue Origin went past the carbon line. I mean, this is very exciting, and it's amazing that we have these things. Now, I hope it's not just for like rich people to get 5 minutes of weightlessness. I know it's not, because both Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic have scientific missions lined up in the future. So they are going to start taking human crews up to do actual research in low Earth orbit.
Well, they've been using Bezos has been using his launcher for as a sort of a you know what sounding rockets are? They launch from their they launched them from Wallops Island, Virginia. But basically, they've been cramming as many microgravity experiments into these capsules as they can. And always talk about billionaires waving their dicks around, and all that. It's complete bullshit.
Well, yeah,
stop
I know.
saying that. Yeah, people should stop saying that. The people that went up, some of them, went up for the thrill, but also on these spacecraft, and they are spacecraft. They're jammed full of scientific experiments ranging from microcrystal growth to animal. I don't know. I don't know what the cargo manifest was, but they're not doing this just to show who's got the bigger wang.
No. Look, I agree, and the fact is, I mean, we it boggles my mind that the advancements, especially what SpaceX has done in such a short period of time, and what Blue Origin has done, it's less public than SpaceX. When I watch both SpaceX and Blue Origin's rockets land back on Earth, it is astonishing to me. Especially Blue Origin with the landing gear that comes down, it looks like something out of the Phantom Menace. It's astonishing. And they're landing basically on the same point they took off from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the science and technology that is employed to do that is mind-blowing. And yet, in our outrage machine culture, that we can't even decide on an infrastructure bill to fix our bridges while buildings collapse in Florida. And we turn it into a partisan issue. I just throw my hands up and go, I don't even know what to say.
Hey, I feel the same way you do. I mean, you and I both grew up in the 70s and 80s. We enjoy science fiction and all that, and we thought the future would be this bright, shiny future, and it didn't happen.
But it is happening.
It's happening now.
I mean, what SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic are doing are unprecedented. They're extraordinarily. They're going 10 times as fast as our own government, because our own government, pork barrel spending, all that crap. I think what's really interesting is if you equate what SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic are doing, but pretend they're not going to space. Pretend they're like, I don't know, fixing our bridges. And if you see how quickly they're moving, and they're moving with great precision, great safety, and great speed, the question is, what happened to the United States? Like, in all honesty, what has happened to us as an innovative, thoughtful, progressive, scientifically aware country? I look at these, like, we make fun of these companies that are increasing human knowledge and our experience of it is mind-boggling to me that we are so backwards in our thinking. We might as well be in fucking caves with candles.
Well,
it's unbelievable to me.
The problem is we don't have the political will to do it. We have the money to do both. Everyone says, well, why are we spending all this money here on Earth when we have all these problems here? Why are we spending all this money on space when we should be taking care of our planet?
We're spending a fraction, and we're not doing it. It's private industry.
Yeah, it's literally 1% of the total federal budget goes into space for NASA. We just simply don't have the political will to do it. We could do everything. If you don't have the political will, it won't happen. And that's what we have to do. We have to start.
But we don't have any. The political powers only now exist to stay in power. They're accomplishing zero, nothing.
It's time to get rid of them.
Well, I mean,
vote the bastards out.
Yes. But the problem is our country is so divided. Let me ask you this, Stubble. In Sweden, because I don't know much about the political situation in Sweden. I mean, are you like a parliamentary? How does it work in Sweden?
Yeah, it's a parliamentary system where we have several parties, and then after the vote, they have their percentage, and then they form coalitions to form a majority, or a minority with the support of another party to basically form a majority. And then that's a combination of ideas from the different parties, depending on size and so on.
But how is it if you guys want to accomplish something, like, I don't know, if, say, I don't know, a condominium complex collapsed because its structure deteriorated because it was built on sand, I mean, and you came in, would it take you guys 5 years to figure out what course of action to take? Or would you be able to go in and go, you know what, there's 1,500 buildings like this around the Florida coast. Perhaps we should make a concerted effort to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening here, really. Maybe it could, but we have a pretty strict regulatory system with inspectors that go out and check.
Yeah, because you know why? You care more about people dying than like us. Hey, they report in 2018. Perhaps you should fix this. We don't want to pay for that. We don't want to pay for that. In the meantime, it's one of the largest structural collapse in terms of fatalities in American history.
Yeah.
And people were warned 3 years ago.
Yep. And the politicians took the regulations out of the laws that would have prevented this completely. It was the real estate. It was, of all people, it was literally the fracking real estate corporations that got that law removed that would have prevented this disaster.
Well, that's what I mean. Not to get political on this channel, but it's not even about politics anymore. It's about the right thing to do, public safety. It's unbelievable to me that we now live in a world where human life is not valued. It doesn't matter what it is in this country: guns, real estate, public health, and public well-being are no longer the primary concern of the United States.
Yeah,
they're just not. Education, healthcare, it's unbelievable to me, and I don't understand why. But hey.
Going back to Mars, have they found any spice yet?
Wrong kind of planet for that.
But I do think, like, I find it interesting, like the Mars Curiosity rover, the rovers we sent to Mars have lasted far, far longer than they expected, which is, again, a testament to the technology that's coming out of JPL.
Yeah.
I mean, the Curiosity rover, I was there, I watched it land in 2012, and it's still functioning 9 years later. They never thought it would last this long.
How are the radiation conditions on Mars? I'm not that well into it.
It's not good. It's a lot better than, say, the radiation environment around Jupiter, which one of the engineers for Europa Clipper literally had to redesign an antenna to keep it from being fried by Jupiter's radiation. On Mars, you got at least some semblance of an atmosphere. Not much of one, but enough gravity to not give you permanent muscle wasting and bone deterioration. Now, I have two observations. I actually, a question for you, Rob, and an observation. I'll go with the observation. So last year, I met Sean Phillips from Dune.
Okay. Oh my God, Sean!
Yeah.
No. Yeah. You met Sean Phillips from I, Claudius.
That's right, because we actually talked about that.
Oh my God, who's one of the greatest? So she plays Charlotte Rampling's part, Mother Mayim.
Him, yeah, and we talked a little bit about Dune, but we talked mostly about the I, Claudius.
Okay. By the way, I, Claudius is one of my favorite things ever broadcast on TV.
It's my husband's favorite thing as well.
And she, by the way, her character in I, Claudius was the basis for Nancy Merchant's character in The Sopranos.
Yep.
Her name was even Livia. I mean, she is that, her character, she might be the single greatest villainess in all of television history. Stubble, if you haven't ever seen, I know it was shot on videotape and it looks like a soap opera from the 80s. If you haven't seen I, Claudius, it is one of the greatest things that's ever been on TV. Now, the first 45 minutes might seem like they're a little slow, but just wait till you get to episode 2.
I think I saw 1 or 2 episodes of that, but I didn't see the whole thing.
Well, why not, goddammit? It's the Godfather of television. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
One of my great sins, I have to remember that.
Yes.
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
Yes,
Now the question I have for you is an Axonar question concerning the lawsuit between.
Wait, a what question? No.
An Axonar question. You're
Happy
not that
to
old.
answer.
Hey, dude, you are 4 years older than I am, and I'm right behind you with that foot in the grave. So
I will answer any question you pose to me about Axonar. I will answer truthfully and to the best of my ability. And by the way, all of the work that Alec Peters says I didn't do is on the YouTube channel, and you can see it.
No, I have. But my question is, when CBS sued Alec Peters,
on December 30th, 2015, when we got
was the production already in trouble before or after?
Oh,
I mean,
no, we were.
Okay.
So
it's basically like sharks smelling blood in the water, and they decided to close in for the kill.
I don't know about that. I mean, here is Alec. I will say this. I will say what Alec Peters' biggest problem is in his life. Alec Peters doesn't like to work. Mm-hmm. He's monumentally lazy. And what he does is he sets up things, and he was good at it. Like he's a charismatic guy. And what he does is he gets you to work for him, but he doesn't work. There's nothing there. He has nothing to offer. Like he'll be like, "Oh, I want to run a Battlestar Galactica auction," and then he'll hire a bunch of people that are talented to do the work for him, and they'll do it because they take pride in their work. You know, we all take pride in our work. But he doesn't have anything to offer. There's nothing. He doesn't know how to do anything. And so we do all the work. And for instance, when we were making the work on Axonar, when we were doing the work back in September of 2015, I began directing the visual effects sequences for the movie because the way that in my mind, what I was going to do was we were going to do a step deal. We made enough money, and we would shoot 30 to 45 minutes of the movie. We'd raised enough money. We were building the sets. We were making the costumes. I was doing the visual effects. So I figured we'd shoot 30 minutes of the film. And just like with the Vulcan scene that I'd done and Prelude to Axonar, we would have raised the money because the 30 minutes was going to be really good. And we had a lot of people, real professionals working on it. But the problem is that Alec Peters was burning through all of this money. It was his money. He accuses me. He's now, his new accusation against me recently is that I stole money from donors. I'm like, bro, I was the only one actually doing the work. What stealing money from? According to you, I apparently am the only person that was not paid to work on Axonar, and yet I did all of the work. Now, I didn't direct Prelude, but I spent 2.5 months finishing it, doing all the post-production, editing it, designing it, did all this work. And his disparaging comments against me are like, it's so crazy. Even today, he was saying that I didn't do anything. And I'm like, I don't know. Over the last 2 years, I've done 2 episodes or two seasons of a Netflix series. I produced a short film that edited a short film that Dust bought. I produced and edited a feature film that's coming out theatrically. I've done my medical lecture series. I mean, and he's done nothing. 0. And it was frustrating because when Alec Peters hired people to do things, he would get good people to do it. The problem was, and the problem, I said this today, so many people believe this. So many people think that when you make a movie, because we all love movies, if you work on a movie, everybody thinks that hasn't ever worked on one, that when you do work on one, that when the movie's out, somehow you are going to feel different about yourself. That because everyone sees the great parties and, oh my God, you're going to date an actress or win an Academy Award or whatever. That shit never happens. You work on something for years at a time, and when it's out, it's out. It's done. Yeah. You're not any different. I tried to explain to somebody the other day, when I was directing Femme Fatale's episodes for HBO Cinemax, it was a Skinemax show. We had to direct an episode every 3 days. When we finished at the end of the day, as the director and the editor, I'm like, oh my God, this was awesome. I was always like the last person to walk back to the production trailer, and I wanted to walk into a trailer because I worked on big budgets movies where you're living in foreign countries with the whole crew. And I would walk into the trailer thinking, hey, let's all go out and get a drink or something. We had a great production day. Everybody went home. They were gone. And nobody wanted to hear about it. It was a job. They don't care. And it's like, but this episode's going to be great for a late night sex show. This is going to rule. We did a great job today. Nobody cares. It's their job. And they leave. They go home. And unless you understand that ultimately movies and TV shows are product, they're being made to be sold by whatever company's making them. And while we love them, and the people that make them certainly love them, you can't expect everybody else to. And what was interesting is all the people that Alec Peters got to make the Axonar project loved what they did. The problem with Alec is he was completely disinterested in the process. What he wanted was the accolades you receive after everything is done.
Yeah.
But he doesn't understand, how do you do that? He knows how to hire people that know how to do it, but he himself doesn't, and nor is he particularly interested. And what's that?
Reminds me of, it reminds me of what George R. R. Martin said in an interview. He said, I don't like writing books. I like to have written books.
That's exactly right. And for me, one of the things, I just like the process. And one of the reasons that I am not, I think, more successful than I am, it's because everybody wants to pigeonhole you. And like, for instance, I was directing my own episodes of Femme Fatales that they also let me edit. That would never happen on any other show. But when they're trying to save money, Mark, who produced Femme Fatales, who I'd worked with before, is like, you want to edit your own episodes? Go right ahead. Well, in that would never happen in television. A director in TV works with an editor, they cut it together, the director leaves, the producers come in and continue to work with the editor and finish the show the way they want it. Well, I just love editing. So I love the puzzling of it, but in the rest of my days, if I was ever allowed to direct more TV, I'll tell you, they would never let me edit my own television shows. Never. Unless I was the showrunner or something. They would never let me do it. And that's something that is not really understood. And what's interesting is editing is a process. And what someone like Alec wants to do is he wants to watch your edits when you're done, and he'll make a few notes. He does not have the patience. When you sit down with him at a meeting or something, he'll be interested in what you're saying for about 4 minutes. And then he'll literally in the meeting start looking or surfing the internet. He's completely not interested in it at all. And that was a real problem for all of us because we all love the process. We all love doing this stuff. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't know if I said this to John, but I'll never forget that before we shot the Vulcan scene, Milton Santiago, our DP, he had 2 different cameras. He had a red camera and he had an Arri. And since we were using natural sunlight, basically, he came up in the afternoon and we shot the 2 costumes for the Vulcan scene on mannequins, basically where the sun would be when we shot. And he used his different cameras to see, because they're very detailed costumes, they shimmered in the sunlight, and we wanted to see which camera looked better to pick, would we shoot with the Arri or the red? And Alec came outside and he's looking, he just walks out, he goes, what are you doing? And we're like, oh, well, we're just doing some camera tests with the costumes. And in his mind, he hadn't approved this. So he's going, well, who said you could do this? And we're both looking at him like, why would anybody say we need to do this? It's just par for the course. We're trying to figure out which camera to use. And the insinuation is like, you don't fucking know what the fuck we're talking about. So why would you have anything to do with this at all? You don't know anything about this. As a matter of fact, you would never think about this. Why are you interrupting us? That's kind of how but he would, because he wants to be. And there's so many people in the entertainment business like this. They want to be a part of it because that's what they think. And they will tell you and get involved even if they don't know anything about what it is you're doing. That is par for the course. No other business. I mean, maybe that's not true, but like, if you're working at an architecture firm, no one who knows nothing about engineering is not going to insinuate themselves into the process when you're trying to figure out a load-bearing foundation. Like, where should we put this beam? Nobody who doesn't know the science is going to get involved. In movies, people who don't know shit get involved all the time. And that's why the business is such a pain in the ass to work in. And that's what happened to Axanar. Axanar was fine. It was working just fine. And we made Prelude to Axanar, and we were moving forward, and Alec Peters wanted what he thought was glory. And what he didn't understand was, no, it's not glory. You have to wait till you're done, and what you need is... And he did it. What was so ironic is he put together a team that made Prelude. Winning, you won your victory. But in his mind, he wasn't the center of attention, so it wasn't a win for him. I'm like, how could it not be a win? Everyone loves this. I have to say, even when I was at San Diego Comic-Con and we debuted Prelude to Axanar in a movie theater, I edited the whole thing. I finished it. As a matter of fact, I was the last person. I left on a train 6 o'clock in the morning from L.A., with the finished thing that Bing Bailey and I had spent 2 days finishing. We had to recolor time it all. I barely got to the train in time. And that night, when it debuted, I sat in a movie theater and listened to it in 5.1 and watched on this giant screen. I'm like, and I was I was the one that brought it there. I carried it over the finish line. And I was sitting there going, this is amazing. And yet, now I didn't do shit, according to Alec Peters. Like, he doesn't... The funny thing is because he doesn't know. He doesn't know what went into the finishing Prelude to Axanar. He has no idea. Or the Vulcan scene. Or everything I did on the Axanar feature. He does not know. Nor was he interested. So he just says, I stole money and equipment. Like, I didn't have access to your money. And as for equipment, I was in your office every day for 3 years. It's like, what are you talking about? When we left the office... You never asked me for anything. You moved to Atlanta. It wasn't until I resigned that you started coming after me because you didn't have me to finish your project anymore. So,
yeah. Well, when I read the article and I read the article and then I saw you being interviewed by John Turk and I had some questions about the timeline because I've been following this.
Oh yeah, please ask me anything.
And I just was really curious about which came first, the lawsuit or the production troubles.
Well, our production troubles began as soon as Prelude to Axanar was finished, and right. Alec Peters wanted to get rid of his team.
Right. Okay.
And so when you're a producer and you put together a team that puts together a movie that you like, and what happened was Alec and Christian were friends. Christian brought all of his friends in, and I was one of them. He brought me in to make Prelude to Axanar what it was. And we won. It was a great victory. Well, what happened was Alec wasn't as involved in that victory as he wanted to be, because that's what people think they're gonna. They think they're gonna feel different. They think that, I don't know, people are gonna worship the ground they walk on. Well, no. What you do is, if you're a good producer and you've produced a movie that people like, you keep that same production team. That's and let them do what they do. Let them go off and do what they do. That's what a good producer does. You hang back. No, Alex started getting rid of those people right away. And it made no sense. And it got to the point where Christian had lost his entire production team.
Yeah.
So he quit. Do
you think that when stories of the troubles with the production started coming out, that's when the powers that be at CBS said, hey, we could shut these things down once and for all. Here's an example of a production that's in trouble. Let's go in and kill them while we have a chance.
No. I think what happened was it was a combination of things. Prelude to Axanar was done as a faux documentary.
Right.
So everyone would never mistake that for real Star Trek.
Right.
But when I direct, and I know that, I mean, this is not self-aggrandizing. I know this from the lawsuit. When I did the Vulcan scene, which we shot against a 20-foot by 20-foot green screen in a parking lot with natural light, when I had done that, it proved that I could do Enterprise because I used all the scenes on Vulcan from Enterprise. It was possible for our team to recreate at least the quality of Star Trek Enterprise in our parking lot, which meant in the marketplace, what we were doing could be mistaken for modern Star Trek. And that was the line that we crossed. That's what people don't understand, is that we muddled the perception of Star Trek in the public's mind by doing the Vulcan scene. And it's not because the Vulcan scene was just a proof of concept. All it would do was get better. And once we had done that, then CBS is like, well, we can't let them continue on, especially when they were developing a new Star Trek series. So that was something. And also, I mean, we were very vocal about how, and we were vocal because we'd raised over $1 million from donors. And so we wanted to keep them informed. So we did weekly podcasts and basically these self-aggrandizing podcasts where we talked about how great we were. But we did that because people gave us $1.5 million. So we wanted to keep them informed. We should have shut up and just worked on our movie and made it and released it like Prelude to Axanar was released. That's what we should have done. And that's why Paramount came after us. Not because of production issues, but because they saw what we'd made, and we were so arrogant about it that we were rubbing it in their faces every day. And that was not cool.
As a certain admiral from a certain series would say, sheer effing hubris.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And it wasn't cool.
It's a damn shame. I really enjoyed Prelude to Axanar.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Axanar feature would have been really, really great too. And, all that I've done of it was the Vulcan scene, and even that was just a proof of concept. Yeah. So, well, gentlemen, listen, I'm going to bring an end to this episode of Midnighter, but it's been great. Do you have anything, Stubble, you want to add? Do you want to have any information you want to tell us?
Yeah, he barely said anything. Go, Stubble, go!
Oh, now I'm on the spot here. No, I'm just... I'm enjoying the show, and I don't have any specific to bring up right now.
Well, you don't have to, but we are doing we're doing a members stream for people who are members of the channel. We're doing a members stream again this Saturday. We do our bi-weekly Zoom streams, so that's always fun.
I have one question that's not related to what we talked about. So if you have a director, an editor, and a writer, which of those three do you think have the most creativity? I understand it differs from people to people, but there's a different type of creativity. It's problem solving.
Well, here's the thing. I think those are three very different disciplines that they all need to interact, but they do their thing at very different times. So a writer comes up with the script and whatever is the story, or maybe it's a novel that they've adapted. So the writer has worked and crafted a screenplay. And if the screenplay is good enough and they put it into production, that screenplay, a lot of other people jump all over it and break it down and turn it into something where they can make it like this is how many days we're going to shoot it or whatever. But then a director comes in and visualizes the screenplay that the writer has written. So, and then when they shoot the movie, it's the director's vision and how it all works together is exactly what movie making is all about. Then once all of that material is shot, it's given over to the editor, who then has to go back and look at the script and look at everything the director has shot and try and craft the best version of the story that the writer originally wrote. So I do think that those three roles are completely synergistic. You need the writer to write his great script. You need the director to envision what the movie is going to look and feel like. And then you need to make the editor to craft and shape all of the material the director has shot into the story that the writer originally wrote. So you need all three of those positions are hugely important. But sometimes, like the writer and the editor might never work together.
Yeah. One last thing. I was working on my second short story here, but I watched Passengers, and that torpedoed my story because I hadn't watched that earlier, and there were so many similarities to what I was writing. But I had a serial killer in it as well. But that torpedoed my second short story. So I'll see if I come up with another one.
Yes, and you should. Well, Jordan, what is our next space launch?
Well, like I said, we got the Boeing CST-100 crew transfer vehicle launch in July 30th. SpaceX is gearing up for another launch of several Starlink satellites. That's pretty much about it. Right? Yeah. For now.
All right. Well, Stubble, what news? What more news do we have? We know that Wheel of Time will debut in November, but up until then, is there any other Wheel of Time news we should be looking out for?
A trailer before the end of summer.
Okay.
That's
how excited for you about that?
Yeah, it feels like I watched the Star Wars movies like 150, 200 times or something. The original Star Wars movies, and so I know every scene, I know every dialogue, that's about how I feel about reading the Wheel of Time. I have read it so many times, so I know what's come. So I'm looking forward to a new telling of it.
Right. Okay. I love that.
Where they have the same story with some changes, but they have added new dialogue. There are new beats to it. So it's a new version of something I love. So
I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, gentlemen, I will leave you here. I'm going to go away. Jordan, Stubble, thanks for being here.
Good night and get some sleep.
I'm going to go get some sleep. I will be up on the John Campea show in the morning, and then, of course, my show, and then we're doing Fully Articulated. It's a long day tomorrow. All kinds of things are happening. So thank you both for being here. I want to thank everybody for watching the Midnighter. Thank you to Stubble. Thank you for Jordan. And I will say goodbye to you both. And good night, sir. Great to have you both. I want to thank everybody for participating in the show. I want to thank everybody who sends in super chats and tips and supports the channel. Thank you so much. If you want to write me a letter, you can to the Burnettwork.net website. So thank you for that. And other than that, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, Midnighter episode 28 comes to an end. Thank you all for being here. And I guess on that note, have a better night.